Hello everyone, Storm1 here. Today we'll be having an update on some significant severe weather to be ongoing across portions of Minnesota, South Dakota, Nebraska, even the parts of Iowa today and even to tomorrow as well. And that severe weather risk will continue to move to the southeast for portions of the Midwest down to parts of the Southern Plains by Friday. Before we get started on this video, if you guys like weather related content, you can subscribe to my channel. We do stuff here all the time in this channel. Plus, we'll have more, maybe another update or two on a couple of these severe weather setups. So definitely stay tuned for more updates as well. We're going to get started with the watch warning advisory display. You probably saw the refresh here, and we just now got a tornado watch for southeastern South Dakota, northeastern Nebraska, northwestern Iowa, and southwestern Minnesota. Conditions will be favorable for damaging winds, large hail, and even tornadoes, which we'll check out the current environment in a little bit. That's a heat advisory for parts of southeastern Iowa, northwestern Illinois, and northeastern Missouri. It was warm and muggy this morning. We had dew points up as high as 79 in the parts of southwestern Iowa this morning. That's quite high, really, for any time of year. So that is some serious muggy air. Luckily, it's not as high like it was earlier, but we'll check out some of those dew points in a little bit. And of course, we are still continuing to see some fire weather issues for parts of the Four Corner states. Meanwhile, for the rest of the country, generally mostly quiet. These are your storm reports from yesterday. The Mesoscale convective system that we're talking about yesterday for portions of Wisconsin and northern Illinois did not happen, which we did say, or I said anyway, that it was one of those boom or bust scenarios. And the bust scenario happened, which the bust scenario would be that, yeah, there were storms out there, but they were not able to get very organized, and not much happened out there, which you could see there. Not many reports across portions of Wisconsin, other than a few hail reports in the northeastern part of the state. But things really was big time in parts of Texas. We had wind gusts up to 90 miles per hour, and those were recorded wind gusts, and that's quite impressive for some of those storms. And then again, we said this yesterday, where I said, I don't know why we're saying we, there's no we. But anyway, we had a lot of instability in Ovid lap rates, so that helped increase the wind and hail threat. Luckily, there were no tornadoes anywhere, so there were zero tornado reports. But then again, we had a big combination of wind and hail for portions of western Texas, so we did have some big-time severe thunderstorms out there. Here's the severe weather outlook for today. We're getting enhanced risk for severe weather for southeastern South Dakota, northwestern Iowa, the southern portions of Minnesota into west central Wisconsin. Here's your tornado risk. There is a 10% risk area out there. It's not hatched out there, I will say that. Damaging winds will be a possibility. Some of it could be significant as well. Wherever these supercells form into a big cluster, they could produce some damaging straight line winds out there. Some of it could be 75 miles per hour or higher. And also large hail would be a possibility. Some of it could be very large out there as well. We also have a slight risk for eastern New Mexico, western Texas. We won't talk about that today, but I will say it will not be as bad as yesterday. But you still got those same threats: damage winds, hail, and a very limited tornado risk down there. Day two, which is tomorrow. I think tomorrow is going to be a bigger day than today, if I'm going to be honest with you. But we have an enhanced risk for severe weather for southeastern North Dakota, eastern South Dakota, northeastern Nebraska, northwestern Iowa, even for most of Minnesota. Here's your tornado risk. It's a 10% tornado risk for the time being, but honestly, it does not surprise me if they because of hatch area. But that depends on if we could get a better agreement, because some models do not really show much way of supercells developing in that environment, but it's certainly favorable for it, which we'll check out the herd model in a little bit. There is a 45% risk area for damaging winds, and that's going to be the main threat. Now, some people may ask, why is there's not a model risk, even though there's a 45% risk area for damaging winds? Well, it has to be hatch, which a hatch area would mean that wind gusts over 75 miles per hour will be possible, which I think that would be pretty doable. And if balls do trend towards that way later today, it would not surprise me that we could see a moderate risk for day two tomorrow. So that's another thing to really watch for. And also hail will be another threat out there as well. Some of it could be very large. And then on day 3, which is Friday, it got slight risk from southwestern Wisconsin down into central Oklahoma. Let's check out the current environment and look at this. This is surface-based Cape. Look at central Iowa. You got widespread values of 5 to even up as high as 7,000 joules per kilogram. I mean, that's high for really any time of year. Now, 5,000 joules per kilogram, yeah, you can see that in the summertime, which of course we're only in the early May, so it's quite high for this time of year. But 7,000 joules per kilogram, that's something that only happens probably a few times per year. So it's not often that you see a value of 7,000 joules per kilogram. So that's quite impressive out there to see instability values like that. Mixed layer Cape is also pretty elevated as well, up as high as 4,000 joules per kilogram, which is quite impressive for mixed layer Cape. Downdraft Cape, that's another thing to watch for the potential for significant damage winds. And really the values to watch for is down in Iowa because a lot of these numbers will come north. And you do see here, we do have values up as high as 1,700 in the portions of Iowa. And that would be favorable for significant damage winds. Another ingredient for damage winds will be low level lap rates. Right now, the values are not very elevated, but some of these numbers will likely increase as the day goes on. Mid-level lap rates is quite high, with as high as 8.5, which is quite high for this time of year. That really helps increase the threat for large hail. What's your values? Bulk shear, you got some pretty good values out there. But when it comes to storage felicity values, it's not very impressive out there. Which you know what, from surface to 3 kilometers or kilometers, you know what, you got some pretty elevated numbers out there. And if we do check out surface to 1 kilometer, you know what, you got some pretty good values out there too. So there is some decent values out there. But if you look into the effective wind shear, it's not really there. Up as high as 100 is not a bad value. But regardless, some of these values will increase as we get deeper to today. So the tornado risk is still around out there. Whereas this is the supercell composite, we got values as high as a 12. And the last thing is the significant tornado parameters, the fixed layer. We're up as high as a level 2 out there, which indicates the potential for strong tornadoes. So pretty good numbers for about 1/3 of their time. I mean, that's pretty insane if you ask me. Oh yeah, the observations. We got dew points as high as 77 out there. Now, I know there's a dew point of 84 in southwestern Iowa, but if you compare it to some of the surrounding stations, that's likely way too high. So I'm not buying that 84 dew point value. But I think mid to upper 70s would be more accurate value than 84. But regardless, dew point values are very elevated out there, and even for temperatures too, which is leading to a very warm and muggy air mass out there. Let's check out the latest herd model, the 16Z run. And you can see here, cluster thunderstorms could develop in the southeastern part of South Dakota, and even to northwestern Iowa. It all depends on if some of these storms could become discrete enough or maybe get a supercell out there to really ramp up that tornado risk. And that's going to be kind of the key thing for the strong tornado risk because the potential is there we could see a strong tornado out there, but it depends on if we could get a discrete storm out there, which in this case here from the HER model, it does show a couple discrete storms out there, but they got a pretty limited time frame though. So you got that to keep in mind. But regardless here, if you don't get a supercell, decent opportunity, you got a pretty decent opportunity to see a squall line out here. Well, not really a squall line, but big cluster thunderstorms, which lowers the risk overall for strong tornadoes, but it really ramps up the potential for damaging straight line winds, which we do have a hatched area out there as well. So that's another thing to really keep an eye on. And look at this here by, let's see here, 2Z later today. That's a nasty cluster of thunderstorms if the herd model were to be correct. You can see here it likely dies down really after midnight into portions of Wisconsin as well. Here's the significant tornado parameter values. You can see our numbers won't be very impressive, at least for right now they're not. But you can see here, we have to wait and see if any discrete cell forms along this warm front here, because that's where some of your most favorable environment for strong severe storms will be located. Which you can see here, We got pretty elevated significant tornado parameter values out here. It could be as high as a 7 in some places. Maybe a little over a top there. I think the more realistic number would be a 4 or a 5. Because sometimes these models here have a tendency to be a little bit overdone with significant tornado parameter values. But let's get a little box sounding out there and see what the environment looks like. And you can see here, it all depends on if we could get a discrete storm to form this environment here, because look at the wind shear values. Now, story of velocity values are not very impressive, but check out the wind direction of height. You go from a surface that's pretty much due east, 850 millibars, it's from the southeast, and you go up to 500 millibars, it's almost southwest. So that's some serious wind direction of height here, and when you get those rotating updrafts in there, yeah, really your potential really increases for tornadoes out there. You also got a good hodograph as well, and Cape looks pretty good as well. And also that downdraft Cape though, 1300, that's favorable for damaging winds, and also lap rates is favorable too. So yeah, if the sounding were to be correct, conditions will be favorable for damaging winds. Some of it could be significant, large hail, and even tornadoes. One of those could be strong, but then again, that depends on if we could get a discrete storm out there. Because if we can't get discrete storms, that really lowers the risk for a strong tornado. So it's definitely really something to keep an eye on over the next several hours over some of these areas in here. So if you do live in the slight risk or the enhanced risk from the SPC, definitely pay attention to your radar and also your local news stations as well, because it could become a pretty serious day later today. So that's today out of the way. Let's go ahead and move on to tomorrow. And tomorrow looks like a slightly bigger day, in my opinion. At least it's going to be more widespread. You can see here about 22Z on Thursday. You've got a cluster of thunderstorms, at least a couple areas. You got one in north central Minnesota. There's another batch in the parts of southeastern South Dakota and northeastern Nebraska. And it's a pretty similar situation here, but except as you get farther to the south here, wind shear values, at least the felicity values, won't be very impressive. But then again, very similar situation. It all depends on what goes on along the warm front, because if you do get a couple of warm front riders of supercells, those have the better potential to produce stronger tornadoes out there, which I'll show you guys the significant tornado parameter values in a little bit. But really, on the northern end, you got to pay attention for the potential for supercells, maybe even a big cluster as well. And farther to the south here on the southern end of that enhanced risk, we got to pay attention to the potential for damaging straight line winds from this cluster here. And even hail will be a big threat as well, especially when they first develop. And even tornadoes as well will be another big threat. And you can see here how it really becomes a big mess by later in the evening hours. You got several areas to watch for the potential for severe storms. That includes the threat for damaging winds. I did not mean to do that. Okay, here we are. We're back. Anyway, here there are several areas where I have to watch for along this squall line here for damaging straight line winds. But really, the entire for everybody in the select enhanced risk area should definitely pay attention to the forecast on this, because the potential is there we could see some significant severe weather out of this as well. Which, if you do check out the significant tornado parameters from the HER model, very elevated numbers can be found out here. You got numbers as high as a 7 once again, but you notice here it's more widespread than what the values will be today. And also, very similar to today, it'll be along the warm front, not necessarily along the cluster. Even though we could probably see a QALCS tornado or two along the cluster thunderstorms or along the squall line, the risk will be on the lower end. But on the northern end of the risk area, like in central Minnesota or even to southeastern South Dakota, we do have the potential for some pretty elevated values here with the significant tornado parameter values, and that can really increase the threat for tornadoes. And if we do get it, a little bit of a box sounding out here, and show you guys what it looks like here. Look at the cape, the surface space cape, 6,100. That's pretty darn high. With mixed layer cape close to 4,000, wind direction of height is definitely there. You got a nice hodograph. Wind shear values are definitely there. Downdraft cape is very elevated, and also lap rates look pretty good as well. So if this sounded were to be correct, conditions will be favorable for damaging winds. Some of it could be significant. Large hail, some of it could be very large. and tornadoes. Some of those could be strong as well. That depends on if we can get an organized supercell to develop along the warm front. That's a thing to really keep an eye on. And warm front setups can be tough too to predict as well. I've seen warm front setups in the past where we did not see much wave thunderstorms, and in some other cases, we did have big supercells form. So warm front supercells or warm front setups can be a little bit difficult to predict. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on. But I think regardless here, even if big storms do not develop along the warm front, or they do or not, we'll likely still see a big cluster of thunderstorms form along that cold front or dry line, and they'll quickly advance to the east as well. And that can bring a threat for damaging straightaway winds, which can be widespread. Even some hail, especially earlier on in their early stages. Even a couple tornadoes will be a possibility as well. So tomorrow can also be a pretty big day for some of the surrounding areas, but just a little bit more widespread over a much larger area. So definitely something to really keep an eye on. And the last day we'll be talking about is Friday. I'm starting to lose some time, so we're going to try to get through this a little bit quicker here, since I'm running out of time. This is the superset composite here from the NAM. Peak time heating 21Z on Friday. You can see here there's a couple areas to watch here. You got one up in portions of Wisconsin. There's another one over portions of Kansas and Missouri there. And let's check out a sounding here up in Wisconsin, see what is suggested here. And really what the SPC did say on their outlook here, conditions, the main threats are looking to be damage winds and hail. The wind shear values won't be very impressive. You can see on this sounding here, up in Wisconsin here, you can see your wind shear values are just not really the best. However, there will be some instability in place here. Mixed layer cape is up to 2,000, and also lap rates will be pretty elevated as well, which will help increase the threat for damaged winds and hail. And I think that's going to be the primary threat. So we're not really worrying much about the tornado risk for Friday. It could change though, but I think regardless here, especially up in portions of Wisconsin, I don't think we're going to see a tornado risk, but that could potentially change. And one more sounding here, we'll check out southwest central Missouri and check out and see what's going on down here. Better wind shear values, but still on the weaker side. Now, I will say that there is some pretty good wind direction of height here. Look at towards the surface here. Surface winds are from pretty much about due east, 850 millibars from the southwest, and the 700 millibars is from the west. However, the winds are not very strong, so I don't think that's really going to affect too much. You might get a couple of weak rotating updrafts. That's a possibility, even with the potential, and the potential will be a little bit elevated because of those elevated storm rate of helicity values, 135, 162, 174. That'll be just good enough for a slim tornado risk. It's not really big. Now, I've seen an environment like this before back in Kentucky last year, and we did have a rotating thunderstorm. It was on the verge to potentially dropping a tornado, but it didn't happen. So yeah, I think the tornado risk overall will stay on the slim side, but the potential could be there. But even with the tornado risk being very low, there's still going to be that threat for damage, winds, and hail. You got plenty of instability. Surface space is 4,800, mixed layer is 3,900, downdraft cape is up to 1,300, and lap rates wise, it looks pretty good as well. So really overall, the main threats will be damage, winds, and large hail. And I think the tornado risk will stay very limited in this environment here as well. You can see how those numbers really back off into the overnight hours, and we'll have to wait and see what happens beyond that point as well. But anyways, guys, this is all for God, man, I'm really messing up this outro. Um, this is all I got for you guys today. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys like this video, hit the like button. If you like my channel, hit the subscribe button. Hit the bell notifications so you never miss an upload. If you guys have questions about this, put a comment section down below. I just got questions. I see you guys in the next video. Goodbye and have a good day.